Well, another day, another broken promise. This is a day that the government will rue for a very long time. Today, the government is breaking one of its biggest and most important promises. It's breaking its promise to provide everyone with access to the NBN by the end of 2016. This is a government that's barely been in office for 3 months, not even 100 days yet, and yet they are breaking promises left, right and centre. They've broken promises on debt, on boats, on education, and now today on the NBN. And this is a betrayal. This is a broken promise that will hang like an albatross around Malcolm Turnbull's neck. Before the election, the Prime Minister said, and I quote, and people will remember this press conference with Sonny Bill Williams almost there, in April of this year, quote, "Under the coalition, by 2016 there will be minimum download speeds of 25 megabits. We will deliver a minimum of 25 megabits by the end of our first term." Well, today the government is breaking that promise. Before the election they said they would be a government of no excuses. Today they are coming up with the worst of all excuses to break this promise. Before the election they said there'd be no surprises. Well, this is an awful surprise just before Christmas for people around the country who thought they were going to get the NBN by the end of 2016. The Prime Minister said, just after he was elected, quote, "I don't intend on making promises that I won't keep." Well, he's just broken a whopper. He's just broken one of the biggest and most important commitments that he made during the election campaign. And what does all this mean? Breaking promises after less than 100 days on debt, on boats, on education, now on the NBN, it means nothing this government says is worth 2 bob. Well, today I'm going to release the truth. Today I'm releasing the real strategic review into the government's second-rate NBN. This document here is the unadulterated, unamended, uncensored view of NBN Co, of the coalition government's second-rate dodgy NBN plan. This was written before Malcolm Turnbull sacked the experts building the NBN at NBN Co and put his mates in to give him the report that he wanted. And this is the report that the Minister doesn't want you to see. It's the secret advice handed to Malcolm Turnbull just weeks into the job, the incoming Minister's government brief. And it hasn't been released until now. Now, the Minister said this is old advice. This advice is dated the 20th of September this year. It's a 154-page document, very detailed, and funny enough, it doesn't say what Malcolm Turnbull said today. It paints a very different picture, and it's scathing of the coalition government's dodgy second-rate fibre to the node plan. It says 7 things that I want to draw to your attention now. First, it says building the NBN in 2 stages is the wrong approach and it's not recommended. It says that it would cost more and take longer. Second, it says the coalition's promise that all Australians will have access to 25 megabits by 2016 is, quote, unlikely to happen. We know this report is true because the Minister has just told us that today. He has broken the promise he made to the Australian people before the election to give everyone access to the NBN by the end of 2016. Third, the report says the coalition's plan will result in lower revenues of up to 30%, which will impact on the ability of NBN Co to raise debt. Fourth, it says no one knows how much it will cost to fix Telstra's old copper network so that it can be used for the NBN. Not Telstra, not the government, not NBN Co itself. It also says that the cost of maintaining the old copper network is estimated between $600 million a year and $900 million a year. Or to put that another way, that's between $6 and $9 billion over the next decade. 6, it says the coalition's promise of minimum speeds of 50 megabits per second by 2019 can't be guaranteed using copper. And 7, it says the coalition's slower speeds would compromise the provision of telehealth, distance education and other business applications. All up, what this report says is that the Coalition's plan for a second-rate NBN is a dud. It was a dud when they announced the plan in April this year, and it's a dud today. Worse than that, it's a broken promise. The promise that everyone would have access to the NBN by the end of 2016 has now been broken. And so what we know from this report and what we know from what the Minister has told us today is that their promise to build the NBN by the end of 2016 has been broken, that the NBN will now make less money than promised, that it won't meet the needs of business and it won't meet the needs of families, and in the end it's going to be up to Labor to come back and finish the job. I'll hand over to Michelle to say a few words, then happy to take your questions.
Well, this is indeed a broken promise, and in doing so, in breaking this promise, Malcolm Turnbull has pulled the plug on millions of Australians having access to high-speed broadband. He has pulled the plug on high-speed broadband for people who need it most and left them in broadband limbo. And what we are left with in this announcement today by the Minister is effectively a patchwork of copper, a patchwork of other technologies which are not suitable for the high-speed broadband economy that we need to develop in Australia. And I say this because you need to cast your mind back to when the Liberals were last in government, and for something like 12 years they had nearly 20 different broadband plans, none of which worked, all of which left Australia in a broadband backwater compared to our regional neighbours and the rest of the world. It was this untenable situation that required Labor to act, to devise a truly ubiquitous national broadband network. This is not a national broadband network. This is indeed fraudband. It is a fraud on the Australian people who have again today been betrayed by another broken promise. And one of the reasons why it is so bad for Australia is because the NBN, of course, was supposed to and was indeed designed on the policy premise of getting rid of the digital divide, not only between regional areas and urban areas, but also within metropolitan areas, by delivering equivalent wholesale pricing. Well, how you're going to do that under this patchwork of fraudband is completely beyond anyone. So in this broken promise today, we have a government that is clearly not committed to developing the economy we need for the 21st century, on today of all days when we've seen the effects of an economy in transition. We need to be, and we need to have, a government that plans for the future, that is forward-looking, that keeps to its promises and actually delivers what Australians and the Australian economy needs.